Thank you very much for allowing us to address you today. I wanted to introduce everybody. I've met a fair number of you on various PC events or calls, but Erik Brings White has been a community resource and friend in our diversion programming. I really want to kind of start off with a thank you. I feel very full circle here because we started a young adult diversion program in 2016 because I was sitting next to Cy Vance at one of Chris Hammond's best practices seminars. So hearing him talk about what he wanted to do, we stole it, adopted it. He gave us all kinds of technical support, and we created a program on the fly that was very small, but addressed young adults 18 to 25 for whom we believed that the standard sentence of a conviction, about a $650 total in fines and costs, was doing absolutely nothing to affect behavioral change. And in fact, was almost certainly, by depriving them of the opportunity to get housing, federal housing, and about 90% of our housing on the reservations is federal. NAHASDA is the Native American equivalent of HUD. You can't get student loans. You can't get federal government jobs. So a misdemeanor marijuana offense might prevent you from doing all of those things. So we decided that we would engage on this. Our motto from the very beginning, to Jason's point in terms of selling it within the office, was that it had to be harder than pleading guilty. That doesn't necessarily mean that it was worse for the offender, but it certainly means that it required more personal investment. And we have made it an absolute that it is never pay to play. No one pays for any of the services or programming other than my office in terms of enrolling people in our programming, with the exception of restitution. Our structure is the same across all of our diversion programs. We started with young adult diversion in 2016. We expanded it to adults 26 and up in 2019. And in 2020, because, why not bite off more in 2020, we added drug diversion for methamphetamine and opiates and a domestic violence diversion program. All of these are separate from our problem-solving courts that I'm familiar with from my days as a prosecutor down in Miami. Frighteningly enough, I was there when the first drug court started in 1988. And we are aiming in our diversion programming at the people new to the system instead of those at the last tier. All of our diversion programming consists of an intake, a contract that is offered to the offender as part of the intake, an admission by the offender to one or more of the charges that would have been brought, and a dismissal upon the completion of program requirements, and an expunction 1 year after that completion. And so people who go through our program end up with zero record of any kind that an employer or any kind of private investigator. The NSA and the FBI can probably still figure out that you were arrested at some point, but they probably know anyway. Our mechanisms have been very much education and counseling, effort-based in terms of community service or community kind of repayment. And then extracurricular programs modeled after or mirroring what we might see in a high school kid, but for young adults, to put them in contact with a better group of people and give them something else to do that's more positive. And then ultimately we added in employment, which has been an extraordinary success for us. But the reason that I'm excited to be here today is not so much because of that. Ours is very nuts and bolts. And like I said, we stole this from Manhattan. And I know that there are lots of people around the country working on these kinds of things. One of the things that I think has been extraordinary about our programming almost from the very beginning is people like Erik. Erik has the opportunity and is an absolute key to, he and others like him are absolute keys to the idea that ultimately what is important to us is to change behaviors and to reach people where they are. And for that, you need to be culturally appropriate, and you need to meet people with requirements that they can accomplish. Erik and I have actually done a TEDx talk about this. If you're interested and you Google TEDx and my name and his name, you'll find us. But I'd like to turn it over to him because I'd like him to give you just a taste of what it is that we are requiring as a mechanism of diversion. And remember that ultimately, people that are successful in interacting with Erik come back to the system, have their charges dismissed, and ultimately have those charges sealed and expunged. So Erik, I'll turn it over to you, my friend.
All right. Can you hear me? Can you guys hear me well? All right. Trying out a new microphone here. So thank you, Mark. Mark deserves recognition for realizing some of the things that we're missing in these efforts to help people and heal people. So our approach here at Legacy is we are who we serve. We are the beneficiaries of some of your efforts. We know where things are working and where things are not working. And so if we're going to be more efficient and effective, then it's important to tap into some resources that are kind of going unrecognized in these efforts. So we're system impacted. Our I guess what language some people would use is formally incarcerated people. So our approach here is a two-pronged approach. We realize that there has to be some community buy-in to some of these efforts for it to be efficient and effective. And when you have nominal to minimal resources, it becomes important that data governs where your resources are allocated. I wish we were like Manhattan. Nah, joke. Nobody smiled. Nah. But so we realize the importance of community engagement from the system perspective. But we are community, and so as community, the other side of the coin is system engagement. So we work with system impacted people looking for what their needs are, how to meet their needs. And sometimes it's just a mentality. It's an attitude that we address, right? And those attitudes and mentalities are as powerful as an addiction. And so we work to address and process through our traumas. I think in the court reflects the amount of traumas that our community has. And nobody's immune to these traumas, but we're seeing these traumas being transferred instead of transition through. And that's what Mark does. Mark gives this opportunity through a real open dialogue, and he's accessible and he's the system. And I could tell you stories about Mark coming and cooking at our events, and he's the person. He personified his office, where he just became a person accessible to the community. And that was one of the missing links here. And so being system impacted, which a number of our community is, a great portion of our community, it's fundamental to have access to system impactors. The folks who, by just doing their job, I'm just doing my job, and they don't really see or take the time to see how this is impacting the loved ones, the children. And so that's what we work to do here. We understand that there's some difficulties that come along with having a sibling or a parent or an uncle
5 minutes left.
who made a poor decision, made a mistake, and work to redeem that, rectify that. So hopefully I said some good things, Mark. I was notified of this short notice, man. I didn't have anything written down, but I'll pass it back to Mark with this 4 minutes or whatever. Thank you.
So one of the things that I thought was key, and I will be honest, as the state's attorney in a small county, we know a lot of people. You know, it's a small community. My county is 105,000 people. I've been prosecuting in Pennington County since 1992. And so it's not as if there are a lot of things that people I'm meeting for the first time. If you don't know somebody, you know somebody that knows somebody. But I think that one of the things that I'm very proud of here is that we have found unlikely allies. We have engaged with our system impacted community, I think, as well as anybody that I've seen across the country. And one of the most amazing things about that, and the best things for me as a person, was understanding where they had come from originally and where they are now. And I'm very impressed with a lot of them, and you know, some of them, like Erik, have become friends. One other thing that I'd like to stress in terms of our structure is the importance of letting go. It is always tempting, and I know that as a federal prosecutor and even as a state prosecutor earlier in my career, you didn't want to take somebody's word for it that somebody had completed their drug counseling or had completed their anger management class. You wanted to see the records, and had they really completed it? Were they really engaged, or did they just show up and sit there? And one of the things that I think has been very important in our credibility within the community, and therefore our success within the community, is letting go of that and simply saying, I know Erik, I trust Erik. If I enroll somebody in his men's program, where Erik as a credible voice can tell them things that I would love to tell them, but they aren't going to hear coming from me, that I don't second guess when Erik tells me that this person's on the right track and they successfully completed the program. That is success, and that's what earns them the dismissal of their case. We have now expanded. Our diversion programming covers every single age and all nonviolent offenses. And we've even started a domestic violence diversion protocol that is slightly different in terms of its target and its goal. But we now have people on felony cases that are enrolled in and have gone through and successfully completed diversion. And I think that that's been, again, a huge step for my office to take. And it's been amazing just how well the buy-in has gone both within the office and from law enforcement. Erik and I in our TED Talk ended with a phrase that I'm going to give you, and I'll ask Erik to translate it after I butcher the Lakota pronunciation, but it's "Ui humbly le wakanyeja ogna unglu hapiktelo." Erik, you want to tell them what it means?
Keeping the dream through the children. You did good. You did good.
And that's where we started. We started with those 18 to 25-year-olds, because if I can get you out, if you can get to 25 without a criminal record, it is extraordinarily unlikely that you're going to be a frequent flyer in the system as an adult. And that has been our goal. And I am really, again, grateful to the folks in this room who've shown us the examples, both now and historically, that helped us set up our program, and to my community that have really embraced it and run around it. So thank you all, and look forward to talking to you in the breakouts.